Paris, a city of beauty, art, and timeless legends. But hidden behind its grand facades stands a place that has witnessed theft, betrayal, murder, madness, and some of history's most astonishing secrets. This is the Louvre, the most famous museum on Earth. Every year, millions of visitors come here to admire humanity's greatest masterpieces. Yet behind these priceless works of art lie stories far more extraordinary than the objects themselves. A daring theft that transformed the Mona Lisa from a respected painting into the most famous image in the world. An emperor who used art as a weapon to rewrite history. A king whose tragic death changed the course of France forever. Shipwreck survivors pushed beyond the limits of human endurance in a desperate fight for life. An assassination that shook an entire kingdom and left questions that remain unanswered centuries later. And a shattered golden relic that may hold the final traces of a king driven into madness. Today we step inside the halls of the Louvre to uncover stories of ambition, deception, survival, and tragedy hidden behind its magnificent walls. These are the dark secrets of the world's most famous museum. And some of them are stranger than fiction. Today, the Mona Lisa is the most famous painting in the world. Protected behind bulletproof glass and admired by millions every year, she has become a global icon. But surprisingly, that wasn't always the case. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Mona Lisa was respected by art experts, but she was far from being the superstar we know today. Then, everything changed on a summer morning in 1911. When museum staff arrived at the Louvre, they made a shocking discovery. The Mona Lisa was gone. No broken windows, no dramatic escape, no mastermind criminal organization. Just an empty space on the wall where Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece had hung for centuries. The man behind the theft was Vincenzo Peruggia, an Italian worker who had previously helped install protective glass on artworks inside the Louvre. As he walked through the museum each day, he became convinced that many of Italy's greatest treasures had been unfairly taken from their homeland. And in his mind, he wasn't stealing the Mona Lisa, he was bringing her home. On a Monday, when the museum was closed to visitors, Peruggia simply removed the painting from the wall, carried it through the building, and walked out the front door. One of the greatest art thefts in history had taken less than a few minutes. But what happened next was even more extraordinary. For 2 years, the world's most wanted painting remained hidden in a small apartment in Paris, while police chased false leads and investigated countless suspects. Before we continue, I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think Peruggia was a thief or a patriot who genuinely believed he was correcting a historical wrong? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind history's greatest mysteries, be sure to subscribe and join us for more journeys into the past. Because the search for the missing Mona Lisa was only just beginning. When the Mona Lisa finally returned to the Louvre, she was no longer just a painting. She had become a legend. But the Mona Lisa is not the only illusion hidden within these walls. Some of the greatest deceptions in the Louvre were never stolen. They were painted. Few rulers in history understood the power of image better than Napoleon Bonaparte. Soldier, conqueror, emperor, and perhaps the greatest master of political storytelling of his age. In 1804, Napoleon staged one of the most spectacular ceremonies Europe had ever witnessed, his coronation as Emperor of the French. The event was immortalized by the famous artist Jacques-Louis David in a monumental painting that still hangs in the Louvre today. At first glance, it appears to be an accurate record of history. But look closer. Napoleon appears taller and more imposing than he really was. His mother is shown watching proudly from the audience. In reality, she never attended the ceremony. Even the Pope was altered. Originally painted sitting quietly with folded hands, he was later changed to appear as if he were blessing the event, a subtle but powerful message of approval. And perhaps the most important change of all concerns Napoleon himself. The most controversial moment of the coronation was when he took the crown and placed it upon his own head, symbolically declaring that his authority came from no one but himself. Yet that dramatic act was largely hidden in the final masterpiece. The painting wasn't simply documenting history. It was creating a new version of it. And for millions of people who had never witnessed the real event, that version became the truth. While Napoleon used paintings to shape his legacy, another object in the Louvre tells a far darker story. A story of pain, tragedy, and a death that changed French history forever. On June 30th, 1559, King Henri II of France took part in what was supposed to be a celebration, a grand jousting tournament. The king was 40 years old, athletic, confident, and eager to prove that he still possessed the strength and courage of his youth. As thousands watched, Henri lowered his lance and charged toward his opponent. For a brief moment, everything seemed normal. Then, disaster struck. The opposing lance shattered on impact. A wooden splinter pierced the king's eye and drove deep into his skull. The crowd fell silent. What had begun as a spectacle had become a nightmare. Henri was rushed back to the palace, where the greatest physicians in Europe fought desperately to save him. At first, there was hope. The wound appeared survivable. But hidden beneath the surface, infection was spreading toward his brain. Day after day, the king suffered agonizing pain. His condition worsened. Fever, blindness, and swelling slowly consumed him. After 11 days of torment, Henri II died. His death plunged France into political instability and marked the beginning of a turbulent era of religious conflict. But his legacy did not end there. The tragedy also helped bring an end to jousting itself. A sport once celebrated by kings was now seen as far too dangerous. And strangely enough, centuries later, its distant descendant would survive in a much gentler form, the carousel. A reminder that even the most innocent traditions can sometimes trace their origins back to a royal tragedy. If King Henri's death revealed the dangers of a royal sport, another masterpiece inside the Louvre tells a story of something even more terrifying. Not a battlefield, not an assassination, but the slow collapse of civilization itself. In 1816, a French ship called the Medusa sailed toward the coast of West Africa. What should have been a routine voyage quickly turned into disaster. Because of poor leadership and a series of reckless decisions, the ship ran aground on a sandbank far from safety. There were not enough lifeboats for everyone. As panic spread, 147 men and women were forced onto a hastily built wooden raft. The plan was simple. The lifeboats would tow the raft to shore. But within hours, the ropes were cut. The raft was abandoned. Drifting beneath the burning sun, surrounded by endless ocean, the survivors faced hunger, thirst, violence, and despair. Days turned into a nightmare. Fights broke out. Many died. Others were driven to unimaginable choices simply to stay alive. When rescue finally arrived 13 days later, only 15 people remained. The rest had perished at sea. Their suffering shocked France and became one of the greatest scandals of the 19th century. The tragedy inspired Théodore Géricault to paint the Raft of the Medusa, a masterpiece that still hangs in the Louvre today. But what makes the painting so powerful is not death, it's hope. The fragile moment when exhausted survivors spot a distant ship on the horizon. Before we continue, let me know in the comments, what do you think is the greatest survival story in history? And if you're enjoying these hidden stories behind the world's greatest artworks, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next journey into the past. Because the next mystery hidden inside the Louvre involves a king, an assassin, and questions that remain unanswered more than 400 years later. The Raft of the Medusa exposed the deadly consequences of incompetence. But another mystery hidden within the Louvre centers on something even more dangerous: power. For centuries, one question has haunted French history. Did King Henri IV really die at the hands of a lone assassin? Or was there something more sinister behind his murder? In May 1610, Henri IV was one of the most beloved rulers in France. Known as the Good King Henri, he had helped bring stability to a nation torn apart by religious conflict. But on a crowded Paris street, everything changed in an instant. As the king's carriage became trapped in traffic, a man named Francois Ravaillac seized his opportunity. Jumping onto the carriage, he thrust a knife through the window and struck the king directly in the chest. Henri IV died within minutes. Ravaillac was captured immediately. Under brutal interrogation and torture, he insisted that he had acted alone. Yet many refused to believe him. Too many powerful people seemed to benefit from the king's sudden death. Even today, historians continue to debate whether the assassination was the work of a fanatic or part of a larger conspiracy that was never uncovered. The truth may have died with Ravaillac. But the Louvre hides one final mystery. Not a murder, not a shipwreck, not a theft. Deep beneath the museum, archaeologists discovered the shattered remains of a magnificent golden helmet. Its owner was King Charles VI, a ruler whose mind slowly descended into madness. A king who became convinced that his body was made entirely of glass, and who feared that a single touch could cause him to shatter into pieces. Some historians believe that during one of his episodes, Charles may have destroyed the helmet himself, leaving behind a haunting reminder that sometimes the greatest battles in history are fought not against enemies, but within the human mind. And so our journey through the Louvre comes to an end. But perhaps the greatest secret of this museum is not any single painting, sculpture, or artifact. It is the stories they preserve. Stories of ambition and power, of triumph and tragedy, of human brilliance and human weakness. Behind the smile of the Mona Lisa lies the tale of a theft that captivated the world. Behind Napoleon's coronation stands a carefully crafted illusion. Behind a suit of armor rests the memory of a king's final days. And beneath the museum itself, fragments of forgotten lives still wait to be discovered. The Louvre is more than a collection of masterpieces. It is a vast archive of human history, a place where every object has witnessed a moment that helped shape the world we know today. And perhaps that is why millions continue to walk these halls every year. Not simply to see art, but to connect with the people, mysteries, and events that live on through it. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden history of the Louvre, let us know in the comments which story surprised you the most. Was it the theft of the Mona Lisa, the tragedy of the Medusa, or the mysteries surrounding France's kings? And if you're passionate about ancient civilizations, lost histories, archaeology, and the untold stories behind the world's greatest landmarks, be sure to subscribe and join us on future adventures. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep exploring the past, because history still has many secrets left to reveal.